lots of existing programs that exist, but they don't exist synergistically on campus to bring together all the incredible talent, students and faculty that we have to bear on these two very important problems. So what we did as a result of those two external reviews, as well as internal discussions and some program reviews, we constituted a committee, and I asked the committee to engage the campus in a conversation on how best to capitalize on synergies, and then to focus on areas that currently exist and then areas that we might want to invest in the future to actually make us a model for a school or a college or a program or whatever the committee decides to come up with in the areas of environment and sustainability to capitalize on the existing strengths that we have on campus.
Well, it's wonderful to see all of you here. Thank you so much for coming. And what I'd like to do is spend the next few minutes talking about the charge that the committee received from Russ, and then the, excuse me? No, that's all right, I've got it. And then the process that we've gone through so far and our intended process for the next few months. So this is the Environment and Sustainability Visioning Committee, or ESVC. And today's agenda is to introduce the committee's charge, to describe our process and our timeline, to talk about what we identified as step one, which is to identify the emerging issues that Russ referred to in the areas of environment and sustainability, research and education. And then to move forward to getting your comments, suggestions, thoughts, and talk about our next steps. So I'll talk about several other steps, but we've made most progress so far on this first step of identifying the emerging issues, and so that is the step really that we're inviting input on today. We will have another meeting in February, and I'll refer you to that in just a moment, to get some input on our next steps as we go forward through this process. So this is just a quote from the invitation that the provost wrote to the members of the committee back in October, which was to develop a broad vision for how existing campus strengths in the study of the environment and sustainability can be leveraged to create new cutting-edge opportunities in scholarship and education. The key focus should be on identifying the unique opportunities that may exist through the promotion and development of programmatic synergies on the Boulder campus, and then providing recommendations for how these synergies could best be fostered. So that's essentially what Russ just described to you. How can we identify these important emerging issues, identify the strengths that we already have on this campus, and then think about ways to further enhance what we're already doing to promote even greater synergy, even greater prominence in these areas on campus. So we came up with this five-step process that our committee is following, which is first to identify those emerging issues, and that's where we're starting. What are the big questions? What are the big ideas? What are the big issues? And you can think about this in terms of what are the sorts of courses, new courses that you might teach your students in the next 5, 10, 15 years? What are the new areas of research funding opportunity that might be coming to us in the next 5, 10, 15 years? What are the things that we're going to be reading about in the newspaper and worrying about? And then second is to inventory the existing strengths on this campus as well as in the greater community. To review models from other institutions. So there are a number of institutions that have dealt with this issue, have come up with ways in which they can foster these synergies. What can we learn from those? And then fourth and fifth, recommending our ideas for implementation to the provost and communicating that proposed plan. So this is also associated with a timeline. We plan to finish this process, or we've been asked to finish this process by the end of March 2013. So we're starting, we started in November. Our first meeting was just about a month ago on identifying those emerging issues, inventorying existing strengths. We're starting to do that now, reviewing models from other institutions. And then here we are at today, December 10th, public input number one on these big ideas, big questions. Then we will move forward to recommending ideas and providing a preliminary report. We're going to we have invited external advisors to come for a campus visit in early February to comment on our progress so far and to make any recommendations. And then we'll move forward with communicating that plan at the end of March. So I've also got this in a more visual timeline. So here we are. You can follow along the bottom are the months. So November, we began to identify the emerging issues. inventorying strengths and reviewing models. Here we are today, ready for public input, and we've also, as a committee, been inviting public input throughout the last month by visiting departments, deans, directors, to get their ideas about this process. And then we'll move forward to recommending those ideas for implementation, submitting this preliminary report to Russ just as a sort of an update on our progress at the end of January. We'll invite the external advisors here to come in early February, so they'll have access to that preliminary report. And then have another opportunity for public input in a formal way and communicate that plan at the end of March. All right, so that gives you a sense of our process and our timeline. At our first meeting, the committee met. We decided to select 3 external advisors to invite, and we identified 3 major areas from which we would invite these folks. So design and engineering was the first area, policy and social sciences, and then natural and physical sciences. So we democratically chose these folks to invite, people that we thought would provide some great insights to us as we go through this process. So Ann Forsyth, professor and director of urban planning at the Graduate School of Design at Harvard, has agreed to come. Bill Asher, who's professor of government and economics at Claremont McKenna, has agreed to come. And then we've invited Mark Schwartz, who's director of the John Muir Institute of the Environment at UC Davis, and we don't yet have a confirmation from him. So here we are on December 10th, and so what we're really focusing on today is getting your ideas, your thoughts, your suggestions about primarily this first step of identifying these emerging issues, but also some input on the strengths on this campus and models from other institutions that you think might be particularly useful for us to look at. So just to give you a sort of example, a few examples of these emerging issues that we've identified. And we have framed these in terms of questions because I think it's most easiest to get your head around these in terms of big questions. So we have 7 or 8 of these. I'm going to show you 4 of them today, and then Jason Neff has developed a diagram that we can actually walk through and look at these in more detail. So one emerging issue is how do we mitigate and adapt to a changing climate? So obviously each of these questions really is highly interdisciplinary. It requires us to think about the economic implications of climate change, the policy relevance of climate change, the natural processes. If these trees are planted to capture carbon, are they actually doing that? At what rate are they doing that? How does that contribute to our mitigation of climate change? So that's one example of a big emerging issue. Another one is what are the impacts of changing human settlement patterns, land use, and human migration on the environment? And this is just a map of the United States showing rates of change in population from the year 2010 to 2011. And so the dark brown states are states that have lost some population. The bright green, or counties, I'm sorry, this is divided up by counties. The dark green counties are those that have grown in population. So you see a lot of dynamic shifts in movement of people from one place to another. Well, what are the implications of this? What are the drivers of this? How do we begin to understand this in an interdisciplinary way? And again, this is an example from the United States. Obviously, we can think about this globally as well. Another emerging issue, how do we design the built environment to be equitable, economically viable, and environmentally sensitive? How do we construct our buildings, our homes, our roads, our transportation systems more generally? How do we begin to design the built environment to be equitable, economically viable, and environmentally sensitive? And then the fourth one I'll show you is how do we ensure adequate mineral and energy resources for future generations? So here's a photograph from North Dakota, which is an area right now where people are talking a lot about energy extraction and development. What's driving that? Once again, what are the implications in a variety of contexts? So each of these questions is really full of dimensions, as you can understand as you begin to think carefully about these questions. There are many, many dimensions to each of these questions, and we think these are at least examples of some of the most important emerging issues that we see in the future And now we are beginning to think about, okay, how do we already address some of these issues on campus? Where are our strengths? Where are our areas of emphasis? How can we then begin to line up the emerging issues that we've identified with the areas of strength that we already have, and begin to think about gaps in those two sets of questions or two sets of data, if you will, and think about where we might see opportunities for new investment, as Russ mentioned. So I'm going to just briefly talk about next steps, but then I think if it's helpful, we could do more of a walkthrough with the document that Jason's come up with. So that's where we are right now, identifying these big issues. We welcome, invite, are really eager to hear your input, either as individuals, as department or units' own visioning committees, as groups of individuals. I have a written feedback form that you can fill out. I obviously did not make enough of them, but my email address is right here. You're welcome to send me an email. We also, with Faculty Affairs, have put together a website that will be live this Wednesday, 12/12/12, and there's the URL for that. And on that website, we will have more information about our progress and our process, and so I invite you to look at that and to get more information.
Faculty Affairs is kind of the support group for this process. As you can tell by everybody showing up for this meeting, you all are the process. This is a process run by the community of faculty, students, and our allies out in the community. We are waiting to hear from all of you about how we should move forward in this area. I really appreciate the work that Sharon and her committee is doing in leading this. But as it's always important to remind everybody, when we start these conversations, we don't know what the answer is yet. We're waiting to hear from you what the answer is. It has been pretty clear, as Russ said, from a series of program reviews we've been through. We're finishing up Life and Environmental Sciences right now, that there's a call both internally and externally from external experts coming to campus for us to put a higher profile on the great work we're doing in environment and sustainability. And that's what we hope this process will bring about. The role of my office is, as I say, a support. Carol Capsalis is helping to organize these meetings and get the website going. Andre Grota, who those of you who have survived program review will know, is organizing the external review visit, and we'll help out in any way we can. And I'm happy to answer any questions about the process from academic affairs point of view if you have any.
Thank you. So at this point, we can do a walkthrough of the document that I talked about, which basically looks at those big emerging issues and talks about some of the graduate and undergraduate graduate and undergraduate training opportunities or components to that. Also, we've talked a lot in our committee about the importance of public engagement and really looking carefully at the role of the university in the 21st century. What is the role of the university in public life? How can we address that or incorporate that as we think about addressing these emerging issues?
I think there's several of us in here from the humanities. We just wanted to let people know that we're here. Social sciences, you have design. I noticed the John Muir School being mentioned. I just taught Mountains of California in my course this term. So I would hope that you would all acknowledge that there's a place for the humanities at the table.
Thank you. And we do have Kirk Ambrose, Chair of Art and Art History, who's on our committee, but he's not here today.
Good to know.
And yes, thank you.
So as Sharon was saying, part of what we're doing is actually just trying to lay out the landscape of this topic. So there's already been a little bit of a discussion about some of the variety of, there we go, the variety of research areas that are in there. So this is not a complete list, but obviously this area, environment and sustainability, touches on everything. So just so you're aware we're doing that. So now go back to the question about research areas and again, it's great software, really. Come on. There we go. There we go. Ah. Ah. Okay. There we go. Okay, can everybody read that? I'll make it a little bigger. So again, these aren't intended to be completely comprehensive at all. These are just some of the framing questions that we've started to lay out. And I think this is a place where input from a really broad community on campus is critical, because I'm sure we don't have everything up there. But these are all intended to capture components of environmental science and sustainability that sort of by definition incorporate, policy, humanities, and science perspectives. So I'll just let you read through those a little bit. In our own process in sort of moving toward these, we actually put a lot of things up on the board, and this is a distillation of a lot of those questions down to what we feel are at least some of the core issues. But again, I think you have the document there, or if you want to track any, or the comment pages, if you got one of those precious pieces of paper, you can write additional questions down on those. You can email those to us. And I guess one other thing I'll say is these are not intended to be a discipline. So no discipline should look at these and say, oh, well, that's just hydrology and geology, or just biology and something else. Every single question here has to be addressed by multidisciplinary teams. And so the question for us and for this process is really, how can we better facilitate that as a university? How can you actually, get into these questions in flexible ways and really build from the expertise we already have, or add to areas where we have gaps? Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if you're taking questions or comments.
Yes, no, please.
I thought that I had, when I was looking at the research questions, and I saw this other option of this other dimension of outreach and communication.
Yeah.
And from the faculty of School of Education, we actually ask scientific questions about what pushes learning, and I am focused on what pushes learning in terms of climate change science education, and then also how do we talk people off of ideological ledges. And so I see that as a really important research question, because we're desperate to communicate effectively. And so when you come into the question of what is effective communication, that is a really great social science question that we grapple with in education, within climate change science ed.
And maybe I'll expand out these other two so you just get a feel for that, but there's actually communication up there in academic areas. Right. And then in these as well, just to show you what these other things look like at the risk of doing this. Okay, because there are more fundamental questions too. So in outreach and communication, again, these aren't intended to cover everything, but they're what we came up with. How should a university serve its community in the 21st century? How can a university become more relevant in the 21st century? Can we take a more central role in the communication of emerging issues to the public? These are not research questions. These are really sort of the role of the university style questions, and I'm sure there are many, many more. And I'll pop up this other one, and I don't intend to stand here and talk. So one of the other places where there really are very rigid boundaries on campus at the undergraduate and the graduate level is in education. And so there are obvious questions here. How can we create innovative, flexible, and rigorous undergraduate programs in environmental science and sustainability? That goes beyond saying we want to do it, but in getting to how do we do that when we have so many structures and bureaucratic procedures that can stand in the way. Similarly, how can we break down barriers to interdisciplinary graduate education? We do a fabulous job of that in many regards on campus. Can we do better? And then how do we extend the reach of the university beyond our campus? I think, getting back to some of your points as well. We are seeing all these examples of these massive online courses and many other types of outreach that are being done in a lot of places. So how do we engage in that? How do we do a better job? So those are sort of, I say I can, but in principle I can re-expand those should anybody want me to.
How about academic areas?
Yeah, so academic areas, getting better. So, again, these aren't supposed to map onto a department. Maybe economic systems breaks down a little bit, but there's business and other things there. But these are some of the core areas, again, not intended to be completely comprehensive.
Yes.
Yeah, in the College of Engineering and Applied Science, we have an initiative in energy and environmental sustainability. And we have an initiative going on right now in environmental sustainability in particular, that a few departments within engineering are participating, including chemical, environmental, which is civil, environmental and architectural, and mechanical, as well as energy and electrical engineering, computer science as well. So just to let people know about that, we're actually creating a center structure for named environmental sustainability. We have connections obviously with NSTAR and USGS and other folks on campus too.
So is that primarily an undergraduate program, graduate, or
No,
research?
it's a research,
Okay.
research graduate program.
Okay.
Yeah, and we also have an environmental engineering undergraduate program. It's a standalone degree program in the College of Engineering. And that's a top 10 program in the country that is interdisciplinary science, engineering, policy program that exists already. And we're hopefully going to be developing a graduate program as well, a specific graduate degree that cuts across departments. And environmental engineering is all about, sustainability of the built environment, water, air, soil, earth.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I spoke with your dean a couple weeks ago and got a really nice introduction to that program as well. So if there's anything you want to jot down, that would be great, and email, that would be
And then
really helpful.
I'm sure you might know about the new center that we just got from NSF on energy and sustainability around the production of energy resources in the U.S., but it's led by Joe Ryan, and
Yes.
a number of us in this room are on that project. It's a $12 million sustainability center through the NSF Sustainability Research Networks. And
Yes,
that involves many
congratulations.
players across the whole university, including humanities, economics. So that's actually one of your bullet points there was exactly encompasses that whole center, which is starting up. It's a 5-year initiative that's just starting this month pretty much, and it'll go for at least 5 years, perhaps 10 years. I think that's kind of the first big landing of a major research initiative that encompasses this cross-cutting idea, and it really encompasses one of your main goals there. So that
That's
should be
wonderful.
made aware of too, Joe Ryan.
Thank you.
When I first saw the email, it mentioned environment and sustainability, which obviously got my attention. And one of the things that gets my attention in that area today is our food supply chain, if you want to call it that. I'm not sure if you've talked about it or how you're going to build it into what's going on here, but I think there are a lot of issues there. One, you have the genetically modified food issue, where there's really been no research done regarding it, but yet somehow it's in our food supply. So I think that there are a lot of research opportunities surrounding that alone. Then if you look at resource usage, for example, water usage, and you look at the number of gallons of water it takes to produce, like, for example, a pound of beef, it takes like somewhere towards 2,000 gallons of water overall. You look at the cost of a pound of beef, so it's basically assuming that the opportunity cost of water is 0. So I think that there's a lot of research that could be done in that area with respect to what is the real cost of producing these things when you consider the cost of the water that's used, when you consider the pollution that's created as a result of it. Should be looking at other alternatives. I think that we're in an environment like we are here in Boulder that we should be doing all those things big time.
Absolutely.
And another thing, when I saw the reading or whatever, it says we're a green university, I kind of question that. But anyway, I mean, there are a lot of universities across the country that have eliminated things like plastic water bottles on campus. Why aren't we doing that? So I think there are a lot of things that we can do, and they fit under all these different umbrellas.
A few weeks ago, we had an expeditionary semester where we have a curriculum that gets people outside the classroom, and about half of those proposals that we entertained had to do with food. Can you imagine, like, it's like the fashion now that architects are all, all they're teaching when they're dealing with the food web and the food shed, and so it's just kind of interesting that these issues, they probably intersect with every topic taught on the university, and food in particular, is one interesting one. We even joked that we were stepping on the toes of CSU, the Aggie school. I think, how far can we go into farming and environmental design?
Sorry, there's two sort of overarching themes that I'm curious about. One is organizational change, and the other one is systems thinking and understanding the nested, interconnecting systems and how systems finding leverage points within systems that's related to organizational change. Because a lot of these research questions and a lot of the academic areas in sustainability, when you really get down to the crux of it, is how are we going to change?
So when you say organizational change, do you mean institutions and that sort of thing?
Institutions, society, culture, communities, families. I mean, you can look at it at all levels. From the organizational level, like the university, how are we going to change with this interdisciplinary topic of sustainability, all the way up to our country and addressing climate change, how down to the family level, how are we going to stop driving everywhere? I mean, it's sort of systemic the problems are systemic, and how do we think in systems rather than in silo disciplinary.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think that's what we're hopefully trying to do more of as we move toward some different structure.
Where does it go after March or April? When you get to your deadline, recommendations are great, but who's taking it forward from that? Because I think you're going to do a great job. You give outline, the basic principles we need to address. So what's happening after your recommendation?
Well, we should have asked Russ that before he left. We've been asked, to provide these recommendations. My sense is that they will be considered, and probably some of them will be implemented, and others will not. I don't know. I mean, I have not been formally advised on what happens after March. If anybody else wants to provide some insights. Anybody? Jim?
Well, I think it'd be fair to say that the administration understands two things. One is this campus is very, very good. Carl's examples, other examples, at sustainability. The other thing they know is that we're less well known than we should be for these things. And so how do we bring that together? How do we organize ourselves better so that the rest of the world knows what we already know? And so I would be very surprised if there wasn't some movement towards some way of putting a better umbrella over what we do. And so that all the great things that we do can get out.
Kind of dive into some direction for the next course in my life, and I've been looking at graduate programs. And the ones that are really exciting and juicy include all these features, and their foresight. The Center for Futures Studies out of the University of Hawaii is so cool, and it's out of their political science department. Another, another institution we can look at. Another program is the Antioch University in Medical Systems Design. But I see a lot of students here who don't know how to articulate the value of their degree. And I don't want to leave necessarily. I'd really like to stay, and so I'm here too because I have a vested interest, and I'd love to use my tuition benefit on,
Smart.
And also be able to come back and really support students in our university. And I think we need also advisors in sustainability who know all these amazing people and the programs and being able to connect the dots. And so I hope that's also, of course, an integral piece, but having people who, like me, I'd be a perfect candidate for this job.
Yes.
To help
Did you write that down?
Yeah, and the students are going to be the ones who tell the story. And so making sure that we have really good advisors who are hip to the jive.
That's a really good point. I think that is where a lot of the rubber hits the road, so to speak. It's with the advisor and student relationship.
And it occurs to me that one sort of science issue that runs through some of these sustainability issues, including climate change adaptation and human impacts, is the dynamics of soil and sediment as it moves around the place. This is something that CU is pretty good at, and it bears on everything from soil erosion to landslide hazards, coastal systems, water quality, sinking deltas around the world, and this kind of thing. So it seems like that's an interesting piece of the pie as well.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
I'm concerned about the global biodiversity. We're in a major extinction event that will probably rival any in geologic history. So I think biodiversity is certainly an important issue to put on there. And as you know, I'm working on an ecological literacy leadership proposal that would be joint between the U.S. and India. So I'm open to any collaboration on that.
I became interested in teaching actually environmental literature a few years ago. This is just before Katrina hit. And I went to, there was a conference in Taipei on environmental discourse. And they knew a heck of a lot more about what kinds of novels were being written about environmental degradation than anybody I knew here. They were all in English. So I thought it was an incredibly compelling thing to think about what they were doing. And there was one woman in particular, and I draw this to your attention because I thought it was such an extraordinary moment in interdisciplinarity. It's a woman at Monash University who studied the Lisbon earthquake in the 18th century, and she was a Germanist. she had hooked up with a woman who was working on climate issues in Australia. And they're talking about the ways in which philosophy and literature offer ways of telling stories about adaptation, and particularly adaptation of climate. So that in a sense that there's a way of imagining ahead of time how one can deal with the kinds of issues that we're talking about in terms of environmental degradation. So I think it's something, I think that there are bits and pieces of people in philosophy, there are people in the languages. I've had graduate students approach me this year because I've been teaching an undergraduate course on American nature writing, and that the humanities have not been used in the way that they could possibly be used in this university.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I was just recently putting together a curriculum for the class, and I was kind of struck at the lack of information I could find on campus here, looking for cross-disciplinary help on the class itself, looking for resources because it's a big subject matter. And my hope here is this becomes this incredible clearinghouse I could not find in the last couple of months. Because I hear bits and pieces everywhere, but I'm searching all over, you know, both from professional colleagues, but I really wanted to delve into the community here on campus, but there is no clearinghouse for that. It's good and it's scattered. You got to search deep.
That's a really good point.
Is this the vehicle through which students give their input, or is there a more formal process for looking at, you know, graduate students, what they're interested in, what undergraduates are, you know, looking for?
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you mentioned that. We do have a group on our committee. Katie is spearheading that group. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? I mean, this is one mechanism. There are others as well that you're putting together.
Yeah, so this was open to anyone, but we were thinking probably at least many undergraduates wouldn't attend, and that's probably the case looking at the crowd here. So we don't have anything in place yet. I'm interested in feedback if you have good ideas for how to do that, but we're thinking of a couple different ways, maybe a sort of a general survey, maybe some focus groups and some interviews with incentives to participate. We decided not to do anything right now because it's just bad timing, I think, for students. We're just diving right into finals, and with this big picture discussion, I didn't know if they would be as interested in it. Maybe that was wrong, but anyone can submit input right now. And then, so in January, we'll look at doing some of these focus groups and interviews. And yeah, I would love input. There's 2 other people on the committee working on that with me, and but we'll definitely try to, maybe I'll ask all of you in the room to pass along the emails that we send to students. Because I think that will be the key, is getting the word out there among all the rest of the emails that all the students get on campus. You know. Thank you for asking.
We just want to thank you guys for letting us be here, first of all. We're really excited to participate with the future of our program, Environmental Design. So yeah, just kind of, you know, tailgating what you were saying, we actually did ask for our students' input. You know, we put together a mission statement, myself and a few other faculty members, to really discuss, you know, what we wanted as design students. And, you know, over the course of 4 days, we got 574 signatures out of our 650. So they're all right here, too. We got it covered. And, you know, we do have student response. It's not a problem. It's there. You know, we're excited to see what happens, and, you know, really defining ourselves as designers among campus.
I have a petition signed by 18 out of 19 of our instructors, and I want to say that 80% of the classes in our environmental design program are taught by instructors, so it's very different than most programs. The reasons for that are 2. One is that we had our resources were going to Denver to a disproportionate degree when we were a 2-campus program, and I don't know how many of you are aware of that history. As of this summer, we're now an independent environmental design program here on the Boulder campus. So that's one reason. But the second reason is that the heart of our program are the studio classes, and we want them to be taught by people like a number of the instructors here in the room who are also engaged in professional practice, so that the very latest developments in professional practice are being brought into the classrooms. Also, in many of our classes, not only the studio classes, but also seminars, internships, we're engaging with community partners, and we're engaging with other areas all around the campus. So I wanted to give these to you, Sharon, because I have to leave in a few minutes for a class. And I wanted to say that in asking for a College of Environmental Design here, which is what the students have initiated, there has been a concern expressed that we may be saying we want to go off and have our own isolated insular college, and it's anything but that. You know, we've been working through partnerships and through interdisciplinarity, and we want to be able to do that even more so. So we're really eager to engage in dialogue with you. So what you find, there are two statements. One is the statement that the students are talking about, and another one comes from Joanne Silverstein, where she's laying out all the strengths that a strong design program will bring to the Boulder campus here and what we can contribute to all of you. I mean, all of the areas that you've identified here and spoken to, we have engaged with those areas already, as Michael pointed out, with urban agriculture and food systems, or we're very eager to do so. So by no means do we want to opt out into our own college. We want to be in a strong position where we're in control of our curriculum, where we can reach out and dialogue and form partnerships with everybody here.
Thank you. The main reason I enrolled as an undergraduate student here was because of the strong design program that CU Boulder had and its relationship to sustainable design into the environment. And I just think having our own college would still allow us to always put design first, but being under this larger umbrella of sustainability and the environment would help us to reach like other areas that you guys can offer. And so I just voice my support in that.
Thank you.
We have 21 faculty lives in graduate school, and our faculty are tenured in 9 different academic departments, some in engineering, some in arts and sciences. Trying to figure out where we fit in here, but we have a 45-year-old history of studying environmental science, and we have a research staff of 600 individuals. And those people are paid through contracts and grants from NSF, NASA, and NOAA. We have a policy center directed by William Travis that's been in place for 10 years, interested in science policy, including especially environmental science policy. And we have an outreach program that Susan Burke could mention just in a minute. And we deal a lot with extreme events, environmental challenges, you might say, particularly because of our relationship with NOAA. So we're interested in storms. Predicting them, understanding them, showing how they vary as climate changes. We're interested in air pollution, movement of pollutants across continents. We do a lot of global monitoring. We have a large piece of the global monitoring program for the carbon cycle analysis supported by a number of agencies. And we're interested in air quality generally. We have a big program in ice cover, disappearance of ice, changes in permafrost. I'm sure we'll fit in somewhere. Susan, you want to describe your excellent program?
Sure. We have had an outreach program since 1996 in the area of environmental sciences and geophysical sciences. And we do a lot of work with climate education, with teachers in particular in school districts, both nationally and locally. I never go anywhere without a whole bunch of materials about our projects. We do a lot of work in climate education, especially in how to help teachers deal with controversy in this topic and how to put science forward and not let the controversy get in the way of science. We have an emerging opportunity in this country in that the new science standards coming down the pike privilege environmental science and sustainability to a degree that they haven't in the past. And because teacher preparation is done at the university through the School of Ed and through our intro courses, we have an opportunity to reach those people in a way that will continue on into the rest of the society. And that said, we're also connected nationally with a lot of projects that are integrating sustainability into undergraduate classes. So there's lots of models out there. I would like to see, you know, our engagement with the rest of the community be very front and center, along with the science and the humanities and all the rest of our research questions, because underlying all of these questions is how do you get the rest of society to go along with, you know, we're not just telling them how we're going to prepare them. They need to be partners in that, and I think we can do well there. My question for this process is, I see a great conceptual framework here. What I'm not clear on is what kind of recommendations you want to bring forward at the end of this. I presume you want more nuts and bolts recommendations to allow us to know each other better and to get, you know, stop putting our light under the bushel, as it were, under the bushel basket. So you want more people to know about us, you want there to be more to know about. And I'm not clear on how we get to that point.
Does anybody want to comment on that?
Isn't that stay tuned till the next public forum?
I think that's very much the topic of the next one. Implementation. How do you actually? I mean, this has been great. I mean, I'll ask you a question. How many people have heard something new about the campus you didn't know when you walked in the room? Right. So we're doing our job right now. But so the second part of that is, how do we then take this fantastic expertise and make it function together or better together? And that's at the next public meeting. We'll go
We're all busy. How do we get outside of our own departmental seminars into?
And we're going to be wrestling with that starting in January as a committee, and definitely welcome input at that point.
On that note, have you heard of a project called Vivo, V-I-V-O? It's a website you can go to and you can search kind of anything. For example, if you want someone who knows about environmental science, you could type that in there, and it would give you a list of faculty that said that they have that in their kind of repertoire.
Right, and that just launched about a month ago on campus.
Yeah,
right.
it's very much early stages, but it's working. It looks great.
I spent the last 3 years in Oslo, Norway, and I spearheaded an international project where high school students from 4 different countries investigated seminal studies related to climate change and talked to each other online along with some scientists that I recruited. So it was a very digital literacy program. And I guess when I'm hearing this I'm so glad I came. I'm learning so much about my campus. And I love the idea and look forward to the idea of us learning even more deeply about each other's work. I can already see some synergy, you know, just my mind is clicking just listening to your program and hearing some things about the water and various other aspects. And so I like the idea of being part of a movement where we share each other's work, not just, you know, introducing ourselves. It was a great beginning. I look forward to even further investigating.
Great.
As an area of studies center, area studies have traditionally kind of represented the humanities and social sciences, and one of the things I'd like to try and do more of with CAS is to serve as a bridge between humanities and social sciences and the environmental sciences on this campus, particularly given the strength of that, and do that in the context of the study of Asia. And I'd like to see the Asian studies curriculum at the undergraduate level reflect more of that. But that's probably a longer term project that we're pursuing. In the shorter term, we sponsor a speaker and event series every year, and that series is typically themed toward around a particular annual theme. And we've been discussing the theme for the upcoming 13-14 academic year, which will probably have something to do with adaptation to climate change in Asia. And initially we were thinking about the ways different Asian societies have coped with post-natural disaster or extreme climate events, and how after earthquakes and tsunamis and things like that, different societies have coped from a cultural, social, political standpoint. Anyway, that theme is in the works still, but I'm hoping that it will also kind of help serve as a bridge between a lot of the work that's being done in environmental sciences and put that into conversation about what's going on in Asia too.
One thing that's come to mind today is, and I'm speaking as an architect, that you know, I design things, but really sustainability is a relationship that people in society has with natural resources.
And the root of that in academia really gets down to anthropology and the study of the relations of subsistence systems. And I haven't heard anyone step up today and say they're from anthropology, but we should maybe reach out to anthropology in particular, because really it's like the heart of studying people and their relationship with resources historically and prehistorically. And that really informs what we do today. Next.
I think that's a great point. I actually just met with the chair of anthropology before I came here, so great, yeah, great suggestion.
And I'm tempted to give my pep talk about geology. We interact with a lot of different units on campus too, from a variety of different perspectives. But one thing I think it's worth keeping in mind when it comes to sustainability is geological sciences play a role in what the basic realities are in terms of our energy economy. 2 years ago, we were being pushed to look at energy critical metals, which were relevant for solar cells and for wind turbines. That's gone away. Not completely, but with shale gas and fracking. Basically, the reality is that things change in a way that we're not able to predict. And I'm hoping that what this group will do will be able to respond to those kinds of changes.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Yes, Turner?
I'm from anthropology. We do study those relationships between people and the environment via subsistence systems and via population growth issues. And that's cool because we study it historically and prehistorically as well. So anthropology should be at the table. But I wanted to make another point. My particular interest is in nutrition and food use. And I think in teaching students about issues of sustainability, diet and particular kinds of foods can be very, very powerful because they're real. Climate change, I'm sorry, it's like not real. Although when you have a few hot days in November, people say, oh, is that climate change? But it doesn't have the reality for people that food does. And so I guess I'd encourage people to work on that, to use food as a vehicle to look at relationships with the environment and with issues of sustainability.
As we know, the sort of the classical approach to sustainability is the so-called three-legged stool or triple bottom line, and of environmental protection and fiscal prudence and environmental justice, social justice. And in the emerging questions, those issues are rolled up into them, especially justice appears as equity in related terms, but it's not explicitly stated. And we see a lot of emerging concerns about energy justice, climate justice. There are now foci looking at the effects of the things that you've cited and how they disproportionately negatively impact underrepresented communities and developing nations. And it seems in our work in the Environmental Center, anytime we run a lot of programs, anytime we can get a program that is profoundly influential at the sort of social justice level, it has much more traction with students. It engages a much broader array of stakeholders and interests as supporters and participants. And frankly, I think we get more done because you go home basically empowered that you're, sort of helped someone as opposed to depressed about the state of climate change. And so there's a great deal of traction to it. I also think that in terms of really being true to sustainability, we need to be explicitly mindful of it. And I believe as the chair of planning at Tufts, gentleman, Professor Julian Eggman, wrote a book called Just Sustainability, where he analyzed sustainability programs for the explicit direction towards justice outcomes and found the ones that were more aligned towards that direction to be, frankly, more effective and more inclusive. So when I look around the room today, there are some folks that are working on this, and certainly lots of great work being done here. I don't see ethnic studies represented here today and so forth, and it would be a profound lost opportunity for us to move forward and not engage the fullness of the assets this campus has along those lines and design a program, however your recommendations go, that at least makes mindful in people's perception of the program that we're not just ecocentric. This is not just redefined environmentalism. that we are truly inclusive of all three legs of the stool. And I think, frankly, that'll do a lot to engage much more broad support for the program than we would otherwise. Not that we're not doing great work, but to get to, what's our moniker, push boundaries, or whatever the university says about itself these days. If we're going to push the boundaries forward, I think that's one of the leading edges. We have, as you know, a faculty member in dance who goes around the world and gives performances about gender inequities as a result of climate change and so forth. So the role of humanities here is huge, and we have tremendous talent on this campus. So that's the end of my speech.
Very good points. Thank you, Dave. Let me talk first about IBS, because IBS has 5 different programs, research programs, or programmatic emphases, and really 3 of those are directly related to this initiative. The Environment and Society program, which I'm part of, the Institutions program, which deals in large measure with issues of environmental governance, and the Population and Health program. So we have demographers, we have people who are studying demography and climate change, for example. In the Sociology department, we have a substantial emphasis on environmental sociology, including environmental injustice. We just hired someone who does food and agriculture, and we are partnering with the Renewable and Sustainable Energy Institute to make 2 new hires, one senior and one junior, in the societal dimensions of energy. So natural hazards, climate change adaptation, demographic drivers of vulnerability to climate change and extreme events. These are the sorts of things that we're fundamentally interested in. And I'm very interested in these discussions that are going on here.
I'm sorry I didn't recognize you. I know your name, I just didn't know your face.
Oh, I'm not straight anymore, I'm curly.
Okay.
That's okay.
Thank you, that's a great insight. Yes, Matt.
One thing that isn't apparent, and I think maybe it would be useful, is having the housing and dining services be part of this equation. That we are, as faculty, with the students a relatively small percentage of their day, and I think that engaging them in the residences and their life off campus would be a way of having a very powerful impact and really addressing the whole student, not just the scholar who is here. Obviously, the RAP programs, the 2 I'm involved with, the Sustainability by Design RAP, and we just got a new name.
Sustainable and social innovation.
Sustainability and Social Innovation RAP at Williams Village North, which is this great building that allows us to measure our environmental impact. That's an obvious place, but I think in looking at all of the RAP programs, there would be an opportunity to talk to students about the exact point that Dave was making, which is that there's climate suffering, and understanding what the relationship that students have emotionally, the idea that we're going through this huge environmental die-off is an important thing that we should be thinking about outside of classrooms also.
Since we're taking a bit of an inventory today, I just wanted to let everyone know that we are here also and really appreciated the time you took to come to our department. And from that, we formed a volunteer committee of those of us that are where our research, teaching, and outreach efforts really are related to environment and sustainability. So the perspective that we bring to these topics, we looked at some of these questions, and we saw a lot of our research in, for example, disease ecology, restoration ecology, conservation biology. Some of our faculty are now getting into energy and biofuels production. So we saw a really nice way. So like Dr. Lewis, we were looking at these questions and how we would fit. And so I think that we wanted you to know that there is interest and excitement on the part of our faculty in this sort of planning process, and just hoping to be involved.
Great, thank you.
I think that certainly I don't have an expertise in the academic realm, and I graduated as an EMBD student a year ago. My job right now is solely to do with sustainability. And some feedback that I've gotten from students is not necessarily to have a first-year campus experience class,
on a systemic level, but we do have the capacity. I mean, all of our halls, there's 16 of them, they all have, with the exception of one, wrap classes or LLCs, communities that specify living learning outcomes in them. And so it's possible to have students living in the halls be exposed to issues around sustainability and environmental and social justice for the entire year that they're with us, because live-in is a requirement for the first year. I think, you know, the reason that I said that now is because this is the group of people that would have to support that academically. You know, housing has resources, but not necessarily the experts to come in and have the discussions with the students that we would need to have. So it's something to think about, food for thought. I certainly don't represent housing and dining in that capacity, but it's something that the students have talked about. I think it's something that probably is going to be brought up to ComBs at some point so that it can be on the table.
Just want to make sure everybody knew the libraries was here. But really, when you think of it, we don't have a student population. All the students are our students. And we also have subject specialists who are going out and teaching in many of your classes. We're also making sure that we're providing all of the resources, academic type resources, that you need in order to do your research in these areas. So one of the reasons why I'm here and several of my colleagues are here, and we have someone on the committee, is that we've got to keep our ears to the ground and make sure that we can provide the support, and our subject specialists know what kind of interaction is going on within a group like this. Because we usually identify with departments, and we aren't as good at identifying with institutes, though we try. So we are wanting to be part of the conversation, and just to make sure that we see ourselves as sort of connecting tissue, kind of. So.
And if you can think of ways to make that connective tissue stronger,
we will.
Great, yeah.
The premise here is that a lot of things are happening on campus, but yet the broader community, from perhaps Boulder to the world, doesn't realize it. And that we have to take an inventory of what we are doing, and it's very impressive. I raise my hand, I learned things here. And pretty much anyone on campus, any department on campus, seems to have some interest, something going on here. But if you go back to the premise that everything is diffuse and no one knows about it, that seems to me yet there's so much going on, that the fundamental problem is that the way this campus is organized, which is a traditional organization, but departments, institutes, centers, libraries, this, that, and the other, colleges, what else? You think of something? I must have missed something. Schools, and so on and so forth. It doesn't work to accomplish what wants to be accomplished here. And so I think the biggest challenge to your committee, and I have no answer, is going to be exactly, it was pointed out here very early on, networking, systems. How do you restructure this so that you can make a new structure, a new format, new ways of communicating and interacting? I fear that you're going to have a great inventory list, and you're going to have, I have no problem with your 7 research themes, and I'm sure if you open up broad enough, we can get it to 70 real quick. But, you know, those seem to almost be the low-hanging fruit. It's what you've got ahead of you. How this could be accomplished more efficiently is the real challenge here. And I've been here 26 years, and the university has not exactly shown me much confidence it can turn a ship in anything less than 100 years. So, good luck to you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I mean, I think what to me is exciting about this.
100 years is nothing.
Right. What I think is exciting about this moment is that there's a lot of bottom-up support for this, and there's a lot of top-down support. So we're being told by the administration that they want us to be bold, that they want us to think boldly about exactly the sorts of issues you're talking about. And so it's not, you know, just a small group of faculty who are saying, gosh, I really wish things would be different. I feel like it's a really exciting moment. I've only been here 15 years, but I share some of your sentiment, and I think, to me, this feels different. So But we do need your good wishes and good luck, for sure. Yes.
One way of getting more student involvement would be to target all of the different eco groups, I call them, that are out there. There's lots of different student groups that concentrate on different things, whether it's energy or whether it's recycling. So I just thought I'd mention that just to make sure you're in contact with them.
One of the things we're exploring right now is other models. I think you might just as well argue that there's no academic institution in the world that's really wrapped their arms around this any more effectively maybe than we have, maybe more effectively. And maybe the better thing to do is to really try to tap into as much of your knowledge as possible, of your experience with other colleagues who've maybe tried to address these problems at their institutions, and some of the things that maybe have been exciting but sort of maybe fell a little short, maybe some examples that really fell on their faces. So if you have some suggestions for basically the inventory of the other programs that are out there that are trying to pull some of this together, we're very interested in that right now also.
Kelly? Since we're taking inventory, I just wanted the committee to know the existence. Obviously, Dr. Kryzik, who's on your committee, is my academic advisor, but the Sustainable Practices Program is a training program for working adults in sustainability, results in a professional certificate. A number of our instructors are in the room. We, like environmental design, are very practical, not as academic. We really use people who are out in the community, who are practitioners, as our instructors. But we have at least some semblance of some curriculum that we want to make sure that the committee is aware of, that we actually are training professionals who are making a difference within organizations, and we have success stories from